Alrighty, so thank you for joining us for today's webinar workshop. I'm Justin Shaw from Stone Fabricator Elite. Today we're going to be talking about 5 little-known ways to win new retail customers with hyper-targeted direct mail. The way that we conduct these webinar workshops is we'll go through, I'll share with you the agenda for the day. At the end, we'll have Q&A. If you've got specific questions, you can drop them in the chat, and then I'll get back to them. I'll go to the chat at the end and cover the questions that you have. It'll probably take us today's topic is a little fairly straightforward. I think we'll probably take about 30 minutes and then save 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so today's webinar workshop agenda is that we're going to cover number 1, hyper-targeted direct mail versus traditional direct mail. Number 2, how to affordably dominate a local market. And then number 3, how to nurture leads that are already in your pipeline with hyper-targeted direct mail. And then number 4, we'll cover the basics of designing a hyper-targeted direct mail campaign. Everything from the campaign creative to how you should set up and structure your targeting. And then last but not least, we'll cover advanced targeting and retargeting strategies before we get into some Q&A. Alrighty, where should I put my camera? Okay, all right, let's jump in. So a quick introduction on myself before we get into the topic. So I'll be your coach for this session. Once again, my name is Justin Shaw from Stone Fabricator Elite. We're a fractional new business development and sales support team. We've been helping many of the country's top stone fabricators since 2017. And we've really built some proven campaigns and dedicated systems. And you can explore more about us at stonefabricatorelite.com. Specifically in this workshop, I'm going to share with you highly successful direct mail strategies and give you some examples of a current campaign. Alrighty, so what exactly is direct mail? Essentially, the definition is advertisements that are sent through the mail to a large number of consumers. And that can be effective, but obviously what we're really talking about today is how to do hyper-focused and targeted direct mail so that you can affordably and effectively win new Countertop customers. So some of the pros of direct mail. Direct mail in general, when it's done broad and to the masses, still offers a really solid, on average, 29% return on investment. And advertising mail is on average kept in the household, so they'll hang on to your postcard or flyer for 17 days. So a lot stickier than, let's say, Google ads or Facebook ads, for example. Another good stat is that only 44% of people can recall a brand immediately after seeing a digital ad. So if they see something on Facebook or Instagram or Google Display Network, only 44 people, when asked about an ad that they just saw a moment ago, will be able to recall who the brand was and what it was for, compared to 75% of people that receive direct mail. Okay, so the challenge with direct mail for stone shops until recently has been that it really, for the most part, only extended to an application for cold audiences. And you're limited generally with basic demographic data targeting. So, homeowner, in this case for stone fabricators, that have bought a home recently in a certain area. And then really beyond that, it's hard to get narrower targeting or to actually go after people that are currently in market for a countertop or have already connected with your brand and are in the consideration phase. So some of the top, let's just cover some of the top direct mail companies. If you're not familiar with direct mail, how you would go about doing it, there are full-on agencies that'll they'll generate a list for you of home buyers that match a certain, demographic targeting. They'll do your creative for you, and then they'll blast out to that list that you have, or a current customer list, or a database that you already have, and you provide them with them. The other option, and traditionally what most people use, is they'll go to a platform like Click-to-Mail or Vistaprint. Even MailChimp has now shifted to doing, or not shifted, they've included direct mail in their offer. As well as email. So a lot of that's targeted towards e-commerce brands that have an email database, and then they also want to send mail to them. But traditionally, one of these top platforms, what you would do is you would log in, you would build out your lists, and a lot of them feel like they were, because they were built in like the early 2000s, but they feel really outdated. And even for the savvy marketer, they're challenging to use. So you go in, you have to know exactly how to do your targeting, and then it can be, well, I'll show you on the next slide, cost prohibitive to generate a list in general, like as well. So they're either archaic and outdated, or in the example here, this is from MailChimp, they're overly simplified and there's not enough targeting. So you end up being very broad and having waste in your ad spend. Another limitation is often they don't integrate with your CRM unless it's simply to pull your customer or audience list, meaning that you can't get targeted to send mail to somebody, let's say, has just requested a quote from you, which means if they've requested a quote from you, unless it's a referral, they've probably also requested a quote from your other local competitors. So we'll get into advanced targeting, but being able to integrate with your CRM is really key. Okay, so this actually, what's on the screen here is from Click to Mail, which was the first platform I pulled up on the screen. I'm just pulling this up because direct mail can be quite costly, right? So you're paying to print material, to print a postcard, a flyer, a brochure, or even a door hanger in some cases. So there's the cost of printing, there's the cost of postage, and then there's also generally a cost of generating a list of prospects. So if you go into one of these platforms and you're attempting to do this for your shop, one of the first steps that you would take is to generate your list. And you can see here that, in this mock-up, we've got a little over 2,000 homeowners, and it's going to cost $200 to generate that list. And it's still pretty broad targeting. So it's not a great solution for smaller brands. Like if you're not a big box store that it can afford to saturate the market, you have to be very lean with your budget. It's not a great solution. So we'll discuss what better alternatives are. So technology, of course, is advanced. Integrations, with CRMs have advanced, and now there are breakthrough methods to automate direct mail and run campaigns to nurture prospects that are currently in your pipeline, and of course other things for hyper targeting. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so hyper targeted direct mail versus traditional direct mail is really a sniper shot approach versus a spray and pray approach. And that's sort of just a quick way of thinking about it. So not a mass, bulk send to every homeowner who's bought a home in the last year of a certain home value in just a really large area. That would be sort of a spray and pray approach, hoping that, a handful of those homeowners are considering doing a remodel, for the kitchen, bathroom, etc., and be in market for a countertop, versus going after those with very, very specific targeting and or that are already connected with your brand, with your company. Okay, so traditional direct mail campaigns, again, very targeted, they're targeting based on broad demographic filters and generally zip codes. Tends to be expensive to reach in-market audiences. In-market just means those that are considering, your solution, what your product or service is. People that are actively in market looking for that. And then very expensive to saturate a market. And we'll get into that in more detail, but often where campaigns fail is that they're very broad. And because of that, they're very expensive. And so you will do just one a season. So a fabricator will invest money in doing direct mail, or many other companies, even outside of this, niche, will just send a mass campaign out. They've got a promotion on, they'll send it for Q4 or the fall season, let's say, and they'll only just send it to a homeowner one time. And so you can imagine that that's quite challenging to find those that are in market when you only send them one piece of mail every 3 months, let's say. So very expensive to saturate a market, to get a lot of brand awareness and reach people that are actually going to, convert, request a quote, come into the showroom, for example. And then what I showed you there was, again, just to recap, expensive to generate those prospect lists. So what is the alternative? The alternative is hyper-targeted direct mail, because we got to be lean with our budgets and ensure that we're maximizing our ROI on our campaigns, is targeting based on very narrow filters. So utilizing platforms or technologies that can allow you to dial in the who you're going after, so in very precise locations, so that you can reach those that are most likely to be in market and reach them most affordably. And then another tactic is, in contrast to saturating a market where, because it's so broad, is when you get after a very small targeted audience, you're able to send mail to them more frequently. And we'll get into an exact example of this, but a once a week campaign that's very targeted once a week, so there's familiarity, recall, and better conversion rates. And then number 4, and probably one of the most powerful things, hyper-targeted direct mail, is it's always going to be more affordable and effective to put advertising and promotion in front of those people that are already familiar with you and actively in conversation with you or considering working with you. And we'll get into that in more detail, but essentially that's being able to retarget current prospects and or website traffic. So think about how powerful that is, that you're able to go out and send direct mail campaigns to people that have been on your website in the last 45 or 90 days, for example, what pages they've looked at. So if they were on, kitchen countertop page / inventory page, those two things combined, okay, let's send mail to those people only. Super hyper targeted. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys an example of how to affordably dominate a local area to win market and mind share. Essentially, that's those that then become familiar with your brand, and to capture a larger percentage of the market of those that would otherwise work with a competitor. Okay, so sorry, I'm moving this camera all over the place depending on where the slides are laid out. I'm going to go over 3 keys to dominating a local market. Number 1, frequency is critical. Just to reiterate what I had spoken about before, most campaigns fail here. It's just like a one-off campaign, and it's very demotivating to have spent $1,000 on the list and then 3 times that, let's say, to get the creative done, produce the print run, and then the postage, get it out to people. So let's say a $5,000 campaign, the spray and pray method, and then see that the results are less than desirable, no ROI, can't reinvest in the campaigns, and so just do one. Then think, okay, maybe we'll try again in the spring, doesn't work again, and so it's just very, very infrequent and ineffective. So to saturate a local market and dominate that to capture greater market and mind share, we want to ideally pick again, smaller market and have a longer duration, or even maintain an evergreen campaign in this area. So if you're picking a small geographic radius with very precise demographic targeting and or retargeting of your current pipeline and web traffic, then it would be going after them while they're in consideration phase, either or, cold or warm, and sending them something on an ongoing basis. That could be once a week, every 2 weeks, depending on your budget and depending on how aggressive you're looking to be. And then the third key to dominating local market, and it's a little bit outside of our topic today, but is combining that with digital and or social ads to really create an omni-channel effect. So omni-channel refers to that your audience would essentially see you in a number of different channels. Omni-channel means everywhere. That would be like TV, radio, print, social, digital. Very expensive and unrealistic unless you're a very large shop and or big box store. Just not going to happen. But how can you have simulate an omni-channel presence? And that would mean if you're hyper targeted with direct mail, you can also be hyper targeted that you're retargeting with Google ads, Instagram, Facebook ads to your current website traffic, which, let's say if you get 1,500 hits a month and you just want to target people on that have visited certain pages, in a certain time frame, that might be 250 pieces of mail, a month, and a ad budget of, under $500 for Google and Facebook, let's say. But the person that's on the receiving end of that is going to get you in their mailbox. They're going to see you on Instagram. They're going to see you in Google Display, all for pennies, for retargeting versus dollars even. When they're in consideration, they just keep seeing your brand. You're there. You have an offer, for example. And it lends to a lot more credibility of your brand. Your brand must be a lot more established. I'm seeing these guys everywhere. So that's kind of the omni-channel effect, without going too far down the rabbit hole on that topic. Okay, so a quick example here of a 4x4, shifting gears, an example of what that looks like in reality of executing that. Here's an example of a 4x4 campaign, 1 mailer per week for 4 weeks. We've just blocked out the actual brand here, but essentially, as I just demo this for you guys, this is the front and back of a postcard. And then on the next screen are 2 more mock-ups of the front side. So we're essentially running 4 different pieces of mail out to a very hyper-targeted audience once per week. So in the previous slide, the back stays the same so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel there. The back stays the same, but the front side of the postcard is where there's different positioning, potentially a different positioning, and then reinforcing credibility, trust, and authority. So for example, here on the left-hand side, it's social proof we're using here, pulling from a Google review and placing that there. In another creative you might have in the second week of before and after, or an invite to come into the showroom. So it can vary, but essentially you want to avoid sending the same exact thing every week, because they'll just be like, oh, I saw this already, and toss it out. But you want to hit on different things and emphasize different things to reinforce, again, credibility, trust, authority, and call them to action for those that are in market, and currently actively going to be looking for somebody or looking for somebody soon. So what would that look like if you're hyper-targeting a local area? For example, what's mocked up on this screen is just going after a very small geographic radius and as well number of homeowners. So there's many different ways that the structuring of targeting could be set up. For example, you could be aware of a new development, for example, where people are going to be interested in customizing, sort of remodeling their kitchens, for example. Or in this case, what we have on the screen here is we actually want to target a neighborhood surrounding a recent customer. So the recent customer address is what's up on the screen here. Recent customer had completed their project, and we want to then pick that geographic radius around that customer and saturate, those homes with mail once a week for 4 weeks, for example. And in this mock-up, that would cost, when we do this, the cost could vary depending on how you're doing this. It would vary greatly, but under $300 to run a campaign of this sort, of this type. So I'm going to go then into how do we, when we're looking to hyper-target and do this as affordably and effectively as possible, again, going after warm versus cold is always going to be a better bang for our buck, so to speak. How do we automate direct mail with prospects in your CRM? So there are not many current solutions out there technology-wise that integrate with CRMs very well, but there definitely are some. So when you're looking at a direct mail platform, that's something you want to look for if you are using a CRM. If you're not, obviously this is a non-starter. At this point, you'll want to look at different ways to retarget your current prospects. So just to talk about that for a second. If you're not using a CRM, then you could do that old school and old fashioned, and you've got prospects that you're collecting their information, and you've got a list, currently with their mailing addresses, you could then throw that into Excel, for example, or a file, load that up into, a program and get mail out to them. You could do it that way, but it's probably a barrier to entry of labor and time and, having to do that all the time, that it would be a non-starter. So ideally, utilizing a CRM, you're setting up an automation, you're connecting that and mapping things to say, okay, would like to have mail go out and triggered to everybody that is in preparation for quote. Once they enter preparation for quote with us, that means they're, definitely in the they're qualified, they're in the consideration phase. We want to optimize our budget, so, our mail budget. So we're just going to send mail to those people that are currently in that stage. So in this case, you'd say 21 is what's on the screen. There'll be 21 pieces of mail that we're sending out to move people further, faster in the consideration phase. So if they're in preparation for quote, again, they're very likely to have a quote out to a local competitor of yours, and you're able to get mail out to them. If you want to do a drip, you could just do one piece, or you could put them into a drip to reinforce that. So they see a beautiful before and after, they see your Google reviews, et cetera, to move them over the finish line to closed won. Okay, so if you're going to design an effective direct mail campaign, what are some of the elements that you want to follow to design a successful direct mail campaign or hyper-targeted direct mail campaign? I'm gonna have to move myself over a couple of times here, but number one, I've broken this down into 3 different categories. You've got your creative, the actual mailer that's gonna land in their inbox that they're gonna handle, and that's obviously very important. So that's the first one. Then number 2 is call to action. What are they supposed to do when they receive it? And number 3 is tracking. So I'll go through this really quickly. On the creative side, you want to have, and we've definitely seen people that have used things from their portfolio or gallery that don't have great lighting, not a really great representation of their work. And often that's going to cause you to have really poor results, and you'd be better off maybe not even doing that campaign because you're putting the wrong brand positioning out into the marketplace. So you want to have professional photography, having somebody come out, shoot, a recent project, that's going to pay dividends for you on that investment, not only in your digital campaigns, but social and your website. So definitely a worthwhile investment, and or using stock photography that hasn't been overused. We've all seen the same pictures that fabricators are using. You want to dig a little deeper and maybe pay for, in some cases. There definitely are some great free sites there that you can use, or paying for some images that less fabricators have used and that also align with the types of projects that you really do. So, often in the stock photography libraries, you'll see stuff that's ultra modern. And if that's not a good representation of the products you do, then best not to put that on the creative. Okay, so another thing would be less is more. Often what you'll see, and we'll go back to the campaigns, I can go back to the campaigns that I pulled up there. They're very, very simple. It's got like a headline, sub-headline, image, and phone number, and the call to action. Often what you'll see is people want to put everything on there, so that they can communicate as much as possible. So there'll be every bit of information about the brand, address, social handles, website, which are all good to have, but then they'll put a lot of copy on there as well. And it's just, overwhelming for the recipient to quickly, because they, as they say, people look at their mail that they receive over the trash can. So you need to grab them, and you need to do that very quickly. And a less and more approach is how to do that effectively. We already talked about before and after images that, if you invest in that, of getting a homeowner that's comfortable and gives you permission to do that, again, that's a great investment to go out and shoot that, the before and the after, for all of your channels, but specifically for direct mail, it works very well. And then clearly displaying your primary method of contact. Often what we'll see is graphics that have been created for direct mail that sort of mirror a website, where it's like the layout, it's great design, but the phone number is small and buried, at the very bottom, and it's, sort of the similar size of what you would see on your website, not a huge phone number. But in direct mail, you really have to clearly display things, and generally a little larger than you might think. Kind of think of it as a billboard. If you're driving down the highway and you just have a second to glance at it, that's kind of how you want to design your creatives, because that's what people are doing. They're not driving by on the highway, but they pick it up, they just scan it, and they just toss it if they can't absorb what it says. So that leads into the next one, call to action. Make it very easy for recipients to contact you. Try to avoid giving them so many different ways to contact you, like calling or go to our website and message us there or come in. You want to just have really one call to action. What are they supposed to do when they get in touch with you? What are they asking for, and how to do that? Okay, so last but not least is tracking. So often that's an investment that's made. There's an investment that's made in direct mail. Everything looks great. You've produced this great creative, and you're using your just www.brand.com, and you don't have tracking in place for that, and you use your general business number, and there's no way to really track for that other than to have, let's say, your front desk or whoever's answering that salesperson to manually try to remember who called and actually ask them how they heard about us, how did you hear about us, and track it down. So to avoid that, create a unique phone number and or website URL, have all of that tracked. So a unique phone number would just forward to your business line, but it tracks it. So you can track conversions, so you can see which campaigns are performing and where you should, scale or reinvest or tweak and retool things. And another great option is using a QR code, and we'll give an example of that you can use to either go to a landing page that has a request a quote form or showroom booking appointment form, or automatically has them get in touch with you. And I'll give an example of that generally through SMS or text message. And then last but not least, tagging or pixeling this audience so that you can retarget them in other channels. Again, I'm just a bit of a broken record here, but as you go down sort of the funnel here of your marketing campaigns or advertising campaigns, how can you put things in place? So if you've paid to get in front of that person once and they've raised their hand by visiting that landing page or calling you, how can you track them so that you can get a retargeting ad on Instagram in front of that homeowner that is doing kitchen remodel for like 0.04 cents, a fraction of a penny is what I'm trying to say. And that's the reality of it. If you're doing retargeting versus trying to get in front of a cold audience and pulling them into your pipeline, you're going to pay dollars, and often many of them. So something to keep in mind when you're designing your campaigns. So this is just what that looks like in reality. So very simple, very, very simple, super clear in terms of a very basic headline, very straightforward call to action, contact us today for a free quote, very large phone number, so that it really stands out. And then on the back, the reasons of why they should choose you. Very, very straightforward. Essentially the benefits, your competitive advantage, and why. So super, super simple. And then an example of a call to action with a QR code. So utilizing that is, there's the phone number. In this case of the mockup, there's really one primary way to contact, which is phone. But if they're, sort of still got that piece of mail, if it's 17 days that sits there, they're not quite ready to do the call. This says scan me, which creates a little intrigue. We're not saying scan me to, what for? So they don't know. Creates a little intrigue. They scan it and immediately will open up a text message on their phone, already pre-populated with the message. Hi, I would like to receive my free estimate or free quote. And all they have to do is hit the green send and off it goes. Obviously, you'd want to have, make sure you have your ducks in a row that when this is being sent, it's either going directly to sales rep or to your CRM, to a conversation inbox with some automation, ideally, that responds to this person instantly. And then your sales rep can pick this up from there. So they get an instant response, and then your sales rep's able to call them from there. Okay, we're nearing the end, I think. We're going to get into just not too much detail, but just giving a little bit of high level, some examples of advanced targeting and retargeting campaigns. I think I've already mentioned quite a few of them, but just to recap that, the alternative to doing a mass mailer that's very expensive is utilizing other highly effective hyper-targeting strategies other than the one that I had mocked up and shown you, which was, pick a small local area, depending on a certain parameter, and do a 4x4 campaign, or 4x6 or evergreen, one a week for as long as you are willing to invest to saturate that market. That's just one example. I'll speak a little bit more detail about automating the nurturing of your prospects. So that can be done at any stage of the pipeline, as early as you want. As soon as a lead comes in, if you're have a bit more of a budget to play with, it could be as soon as they come in and when they hit another stage. So you get a lead into the system, you want to get a piece of mail out to them because it does take time to get in the inbox. So they'll be in consideration very likely. And then another piece when they reach a different stage, before closed won, ultimately things to reinforce again. So that depends on, the individual shop, what their business objectives are, and, overall sales and marketing activities that they have going on, how that can enhance that. But the primary thing to think about is if this is something that you're looking at doing direct mail and seeing the benefits of doing that in a hyper-targeted strategy, where we have clients that have campaigns that are, $800 a month, because they're very, very specific, super targeted, and that's all in. That's from A to Z to get it in the mailbox. For over 1,000 prospects per month. So it's sort of looking at where are we maybe most successful with our current efforts, and how can we enhance that, and how can we enhance that with direct mail. So that's probably a good way of looking at how can you nurture prospects that you're already in contact with, is where are we doing a great job already, and where can we amplify that. And then to talk a little bit more about retargeting website traffic, what that really means is the same as you would do for Google ads or Facebook ads. Retargeting website traffic, you need to have a pixel or a tracking tag installed on your website that works with the software that you're using for direct mail. And that may sound a little bit strange that you can do that for direct mail, and a little bit creepy, but because in a digital sense, it makes sense. Like, okay, I go on your website, I use Instagram, that tracking can happen in the digital world. I get that. In an offline capacity, about 30 to 40% of your website traffic can be attributed and linked back based on behavior of that individual to a specific profile and mailing address. So as creepy as that is, that's the reality of the world we live in. So you can capitalize on that. That's and then to take that a little further, you might want to have people that landed on the website, have been to more than one page, for example, and based on those parameters that you have, you're only going to send mail to those people. Because, for example, if you are fortunate enough to get a lot of website traffic, it's 2,000 hits a month. You don't want to send mail to everybody. So it could be those that landed on the website in the last 30 days, viewed your portfolio, and also visited your inventory, or let's say even contact us page, because not everybody actually makes it to the contact us page and fills out the form. So, if they didn't, or even if they did or if they didn't, getting a piece of mail based on those three criteria is a pretty warm prospect to put mail in front of and invest in. And that would take your 2,000 hits to your website probably down to a very small number of people that you're sending mail to every month based on that setup. And then one thing that's completely, we didn't talk about at all, is all of this could be applied to B2B, just a slightly different application, totally different creative, obviously, but can be used for B2B prospect targeting. So if you have a list of kitchen and bath dealers or GCs that you're looking to go after, you can simply upload the list if you have that, or there are some other very creative ways of utilizing software that can populate, companies, this type of company, people with this job title, and pull the database for you to send to. So a number of different ways to do the targeting, but certainly something that is extremely valuable. You can either batch a small list. You could batch that and say, okay, we want to go after these 50 B2B companies and be in front of them. Or you could also do the same thing that we had mentioned before. It's just those that are new. So it could be a new GC that has offered you and invited you to bid on projects, and they're not familiar with you, that would be a great opportunity to have some automation in place, or if it had to be manual, that's fine, to get yourself in front of them, to show them a representation of your shop, your capabilities, your unique advantages, to working with you over their current fabricator to help again in consideration phase, so that you can differentiate your positioning and not have it all come down to just, price. Although that obviously is such a large factor, but using direct mail can help that not be the only thing they're measuring you on. And then some other options are targeting your customers' neighbors. There was only so much space on this little bubble here, but essentially what that would look like is you would sync this to your CRM. You have customers that have moved to project completed as a stage in your pipeline. And with today's technology, you're able to put automations in place and even have this run ongoing based on the targeting you've selected. So what does that look like in the real world? You have a couple that's just done a home reno. They did their kitchen bathroom with you, and the project was valued at X amount. So they live in a certain neighborhood that would have more of your ideal customers. Okay, great. We're going to set a campaign that sends mail to 10. We run campaigns as small as that. 10 neighbors of your current customer, ongoing for a drip, once every week, or space it out a little more than that. And there are some very creative applications of that. If you want to take the time to customize it a little bit, it could be that you're going into, let's say you're trying to get into a very affluent market. You've landed a client, you did the before and after pictures. You can get that right on the creative. We just did Jim and Sarah's house. Here's the before and after. And be very creative. They may invite you over to dinner and you'll see their great countertops, but until then, X, Y, and Z, and have an offer for them, for example. So you can get super creative and super targeted, very, very targeted, as well as very creative with how to get in front of people. That's just one example. All right, so we're at the end now. I'm going to shift gears here and jump into some Q&A if there is any. I will stop sharing my screen, see if there's anything up in the chat. If there isn't, I'll wrap. I don't see anything in the chat now, but if you do want to drop something in, you can. Otherwise, you can also feel free to reach out to us at any time if questions come up. Yes, definitely. I mean, yes, 100%. So providing the lists when we do it, if you're not doing it yourself, when we do it, we provide the lists 100%. So you could either come with a list of your own, or exactly as you're asking, sorry, at the end, I just ran out of steam there. We provide the list based on the strategy that we've created for you and with you, co-creating that strategy. So depending on that targeting, we generate all of that. So there's either generating a list. In the example of the campaign that I brought up on the screen, the total homeowners, it was like less than 1,000, like 800. So that isn't a static list. We've produced a list, we're batching it, and we're going after them once a week. On the other side of that, with certain things, when you're connecting it to your CRM, for example, it will automatically generate lists. So a little bit of ninja setup that has to happen there with technology. But for example, if you're consistently targeting people that hit the preparation for quote stage, it's going to automatically populate those lists and deploy mail on an ongoing basis, or to neighbors of your customers, it'll automate that as well. Hopefully that answered the question. Any other questions that you might have there? Feel free to fire away. Probably the next step would be we can just hop on, because there is, I mean, as you could see, there was a bit of nuance there. We can hop on a call, I think would probably be the best step, to just hop on a call and see what your needs are. If you've done this before, if this is something brand new, overall, what the current status of your business is and your plans or objectives for growth. And then see, does hyper-targeted direct mail make sense for you, and sort of describe what that would look like in action, kind of give you a better idea of that. If you want, we can link this back based on your username, I think, to your email that you used to sign up for this. And we could reach out if you want and get that set up for you in the near future.